Hello and welcome to the Focus Friday series with the KU Alumni Association Student Alumni Network. My name is Michaela Sandifer, and I serve as the Director of Inclusive Programs and Talent Development for the Alumni Association. I am excited to be your moderator for today's session titled Celebrating October with the Center. As a reminder, Focus Fridays is a Student Alumni Network program series aimed at providing students with exposure to campus resources, community partners, through the voices of diverse leaders within our Jayhawk community. The Focus Friday series will continue to be offered virtually and will launch each month's first and final Friday. Today, we are highlighting the Center for Sexuality and Gender Diversity, or SGD for short. The Center works to build a community and coalition of queer and trans students, faculty, and staff that challenges, supports, and celebrates each other. They do this through programs and events, educational training, and presentations, and advocating for policies and practices which promote success for queer and trans students at KU. Today, we are excited to have Ash Wilson, Director of the Center for Sexuality and Gender Diversity. Ash is originally from upstate New York in a town with more cows than people. They attended Jefferson Community College and earned an associate's degree in liberal arts. Ash transferred to SUNY Potsdam, where they earned a bachelor's in secondary education with a concentration in social studies as well as history. Ash then attended Radford University, where they began a master's program in special education. While in Virginia, they found the field of student affairs and earned a master's in student affairs in higher education from Miami University in Ohio. After they graduated with their master's degree, Ash worked at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse for 3 years in residential life, 1 year at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, and then came to KU in 2017. Before coming to SGD, Ash worked in student housing for 4.5 years. While at KU, Ash also earned a graduate certificate in women, gender, and sexuality studies. Throughout their career, Ash has taught various courses, most recently within the LDST program here. When not working at KU, Ash works for Suicide Prevention Headquarters of Kansas and spends time with their family in Lawrence. Thanks so much for joining us today, Ash.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
We are so excited to learn more about October, the center, and the resources offered to students through this unit. As we transition to our Q&A, I will ask the question and let you respond. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Awesome. All right. So in addition to the introduction provided, can you share a bit more with us about how the center came to be and what guides the work that's happening there?
Sure. So the center has a long history, and history is really important to queer and trans people. We've lost generations of history to our first pandemic of HIV and AIDS. We've lost generations of history because it used to be legal to exist. And so it's really important that when we have our history, we tell it. And so on our website, there's paragraphs of our history. And so please take a moment to familiarize yourself with that because it is so important. But the SparkNotes version is that back in the late 60s and 70s across the country, due to the Stonewall riot, there was a big upsurge of students wanting centers on campus like this one. And so due to student advocacy, there was a lot of momentum. We had a lot of programming last year, the 51 Years Out programming that told that story. But through that advocacy from students and all of that really hard work, we're in existence due to that legacy. And so right now, we have 4 pillars that we base our work in. That's all based on current research. Those pillars are advocacy, connection, education, and wellness. And so everything we do should really be grounded in those pieces. And so we exist to, like you said, celebrate trans and queerness through those 4 pillars and work hard to do that.
Awesome. So I know where the center is located, but for those that don't, can you share where on campus you all are located?
Absolutely. We're in the Kansas Memorial Union. We're on the 4th floor, back in the suites with the Student Involvement and Leadership Center, tucked behind OMA and near sorority and fraternity life. And so it's a little bit of a puzzle to find us, but puzzles can be fun. So just wrap yourself around in that 4th floor suite and you'll find us.
Awesome. So can you talk to us a little bit more about your story and what led you to get involved in this work?
Yeah. So it's always hard to know where to start with these stories. And so I think I'll start, right, you referenced me being from a town with more cows than people. And so because of where I was from and the folks that were surrounding me, I didn't realize I wasn't straight until I was 23 living in Virginia. And so that's really where my understanding of self through these identities really started, was when I was 23. But as I'm able to look back, I could see pivotal moments of my understanding of identity, all really from the representation of queerness around me. And so one of the really important reasons why we exist is to be that representation. But in the same time, I remember that representation not being me. Like I thought that I might be queer or trans in some way, but I would look at those that were modeling what that meant, and I knew it wasn't me. And so it's really important that we're able to be diverse in the way that we are representing queer and transness, and we work really hard to do that. So found my identities when I was 23 and then 25 in grad school. And I'd always been really invested in advocacy work, even before I understood my own identities. Fairness, equality, equity were all really important elements of my work. And so I carried those and peppered them in through my housing career, and found ways to do social justice and advocacy work within housing. But then there was the opportunity to serve in this capacity where I didn't have to pepper it. I didn't have to find how it fit. It could just be the entirety of my job. And so that was really exciting and a really fun opportunity to be in this role for about a year now, and do that direct work, and still have those connections to those other places on campus, and help them pepper this work into their lives too.
That's awesome. And I think the fact that you have been at KU for a while and were able to take those experiences, bring them over to the center, and then again, still have that connection too and that influence through, I think that's really important.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to work in community with folks.
Yeah, awesome. So tell us what October is and what does that look like here at KU?
Yeah, October. And it can be hard to hear that subtle nuance between oct and out. So here at KU, we call October Outtober, O-U-T. Right, there's the experience of coming out for a lot of queer and trans folks. National Coming Out Day is in October, and so we kind of go with that. National Coming Out Day is over fall break, and so we peppered in some activities to kind of function outside of that break period when we know students will be more present on campus. And so come find us, take a look at our calendar of events that's on our website. And there's lots of different experiences and opportunities that folks can have to celebrate October. It's also hard to say. So take a look at the website and the calendar. So for example, there's National Coming Out Day. We have a couple different events that we're helping people prep for National Coming Out Day, taking their photo, walking through a door to come out and represent that coming out experience. There's International Pronoun Day is in October. A new event that I'm really excited. It sounds like it's a old event, but we're bringing it back, is Rocky Horror Picture Show. So we're partnering with the Student Union Activity Board and SUA to bring back Rocky Horror Picture Show and having it be a big production here in the ballroom. So that'll be right before Halloween. If you're not familiar with Rocky Horror, please YouTube that. It's right, there's a cult following. It's an iconic queer film. And we're gonna bring it back here in the Union. And apparently it lived a long life of something like 30, 40 years every year they'd show it. And so
Oh, wow.
yeah, hopefully we'll get it back in that capacity.
Awesome. So tell us why it's important for students to know about the center and what resources are available.
For sure. So I think that for centers like ours that exist on campus, people can think that it's only for queer or trans people. And we absolutely center queer and trans folks in the work that we do, but the center is for everyone. And that can sound really cheesy and really like too simple. And so I'll go into that a little bit more because it is important that folks who don't identify as straight or cis can come in and find themselves here as well, that we offer educational program to help people understand queer and trans identities, to interact with pronouns in responsible and humane ways. We have lots of trainings and educational opportunities. We also give out free coffee every week. And so come over and get some coffee. It's also important, like I said before, I didn't realize I wasn't straight until I was 23 because there was only one way of representing queerness and transness. And I knew that wasn't me. So I thought that meant I wasn't queer or trans. And so it's important for centers like this to exist so that we can offer other opportunities or other ways to exist and that people can see themselves reflected in us at KU and know that there is a place for them to belong. And so it's important for everybody. And it's important to model that queer and trans experience, to normalize that queer and trans experience, and to provide a home for folks who might not have one due to how society treats queer and trans topics and issues.
Awesome. So I'm curious if you could talk to us a little bit about some of the intersectional identities for queer and trans students and how the center kind of provides resources around that.
Yeah, that's a fun one, and one that we're never done with, right? Intersectionality. And when we work to make sure that folks who are queer and trans and these other identities are seen, that work never ends. And so I'll talk through a few pieces and know that we still are working on how do we continue that story. So we do have some affinity groups that we house here in SGD. And what that means is, so I'll talk through what those are first. Translations. So that's a student group that's housed within the center that focuses on supporting trans students. There's the Queer Trans Student of Color group, specifically to support queer and trans folks of color. There's JSPEC, which is talking about folks on the A spectrum. So aromantic, agender, asexual. We started a new group this year about neurodivergent folks and queer and trans folks with disabilities. And so those are all places where those folks with those compounding identities, with those intersections, can come and exist in spaces that are just for them and just with them. So that's our standard way to do that. And then we also have partnerships with other offices that we work to increase the intersectionality piece with. So for example, we have the Trans Closet. That's a partnership with OMA. The closet is housed over in OMA so that folks of color can access that with less barriers, and it's in their home, and that it's present for them. And so that's a space where people can go and shop for free and get makeup, clothing, accessories, and play with their gender. It can be really expensive to try to figure out, do I like wearing dresses, or I'm not safe or don't feel comfortable shopping in this section of the store. And so that's a good place for folks to try that. We also have chest binders there as well for free. So those are the most constant pieces. And then we also have a couple different series. Every month, we make sure to have programming specific to trans people, as well as at least one program specific for folks of color, trying to emphasize those needs in that way as well. So that's a commitment that we've made, to have at least one program a month that entirely focuses on that. And then we share October. We share October with Latinx Heritage Month. We share October with Disability Awareness Month. And so those intersections are constant for us, because we're more than just, all of us are more than just one identity. And so it's important to make sure that we create spaces where we can be our whole selves and not just our queer self.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important, to not assume that just because you share a identity with someone that your experience is the same, because at that intersection there could be a number of different things that impact that. So I think that's really important, and I think it's great that there's an intentionality around dedicating at least a program a month to center those different groups kind of at those intersections. I'm going to go a little bit off script because I just have a question. But can you talk to us a little bit about, you all do a lot. You've created a space or a home for students in this community. Campus may or may not feel that way in some spaces for students. So what specific education does the center provide for if it's campus, units or faculty, staff? Just kind of talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a lot of different educational opportunities for folks. Our most common one, our most popular, most well-known one is Safe Zone. So Safe Zone is a 3-hour-long training session. We have multiple tiers of that now. So we have Safe Zone 1 and Safe Zone 2 that really, we've gotten a lot of feedback and done a lot of assessment around the learning outcomes. And it seems like folks are enjoying that experience and learning something from it. And learning the things that we want them to learn from it more specifically. And so that's always a really good place to start. That is open to everyone, students, faculty, staff, graduate students, I think can sometimes get lost because they sit in this really unique line. And so everyone at the university is welcome to take that. And alumni, right? Folks in the community are also welcome to contact us to learn more about how they can take this course as well. We're able to offer it for free on campus because we're funded by student fees. But we can get creative about how community members can also participate, and alumni can also participate. So Safe Zone is our most popular one. It's our most well-known one and most established. We also have created some canned programs that we realized we were getting the same requests over and over and over. So for example, one is an introduction of the center. So what is the center? What do you do? So we have a presentation ready to go that's polished for that. We have one on pronouns. How do I use pronouns? What are they? How do I correct myself? How do I do better? So there's a handful of programs, and all of that information is also on our website. And so if you can't find it and you want to know more, send us an email. You can email me or our general account at sgd@ku.edu.
Awesome. So in thinking about, celebrating this month and thinking about October at KU, is there a piece of history that you'd like to highlight for viewers that you think is important for them to know about the community and why?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go back in time again. I'll get into our time machine and go back to the late 1960s and early 70s, because that's really where this push started with the Stonewall riots. And so if folks are unfamiliar with that, Google that one. That's a good one to learn more about. There's also Netflix documentaries. But more specifically, the pieces that I want to highlight are two individuals, Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. And it's important to me to highlight them because they're trans women of color. And their story doesn't get told much, and it gets lumped into the Stonewall riots, where they were the people that really started that and pushed and have momentum and created advocacy groups out of that. And so we would not be where we are today without those two individuals. And so just making sure that folks understand the history and the legacy and how we got to where we got, especially when it's from the labor and energy and experiences of folks of color. That's really important to me, that we remember that and we know that and we learn that.
It's bringing up another question for me that might be off script, but bear with me. So I think that's extremely important. Along that same line, how important is it for us to be storytelling? I think, thinking about the history or lack thereof that's documented, right, for the queer and trans community, that gets the attention that it needs. How important is it for us to tell queer and trans stories?
Yeah, it's crucially important, right? And I'll zoom out a little bit. And if it's hard to see the importance for queer and trans folks and that identity, zooming out and understanding how important it is for all marginalized groups to be able to be those storytellers, because we're not the folks in power oftentimes, right? Our stories get told for us. And usually they're not our stories that are getting told. It's the folks in power who's choosing what stories to tell, and how to tell that. And so it's important that we are able to communicate our story with the values that we want them told, with the endings that we want them to be written with. And we've seen that they won't be done well without our voices. And so, right, it's important that we are able to tell our own story, as well as have folks who we can trust, who have demonstrated that trust, who can also tell our stories, because some people won't be able to hear it from queer and trans people. And so we need those allies to be able to responsibly and ethically tell our stories that we have written, that they are simply reading, rather than them creating and writing our story for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's really important. And I think too, in me stepping into my role here at the Alumni Association and trying to figure out what we mean when we say diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and how that ties to storytelling, and which stories we're telling really well, which ones we're missing, and which ones we need to invite more folks to the table for to help us discover. So I think that's awesome. So as we wrap up our time here, for students that want to learn more, want to get involved in upcoming events, where do they go?
Yeah, there's a couple places, whatever feels good for the students and for the community members, right? You can always come into our center, into our space here in the Union. You can always email us to see how you can get involved, or tell us what you're looking for, and we can maybe point you in a good direction. There's a handful of student organizations that are registered student orgs that serve queer and trans folks. So if you ever have a question, you can email us and we can get you to the right spot. Another place that has good information is our website. And so go there, check it out. It has all of our events, things like that. And then another spot is Rock Chalk Central. We have a page on Rock Chalk Central. You can reach out to us there, and we can connect back and tell you all the things that you can do to engage and connect with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ash. This has been so awesome. Thank you for sharing more with us about October and what the center is, what it does, and how it serves students, faculty, and staff. We appreciate you and the work you're doing for the queer and trans community, and the impact you're making at KU for our community. As a reminder to everybody, we will launch a Focus Friday session on the first and final Friday of each month. Each session will focus on a different topic, highlighting campus and community partners within our community. For more details on this session, you can find those at our website, kualumni.org/programs. Lastly, if you have specific questions about the Focus Friday series, please don't hesitate to reach out by emailing us at kualumni@kualumni.org. Thank you again, Ash, for joining us today, and rock chalk, everybody.